Today is February 17th, 2023, and this is the 26th episode, 17th episode of Season 2 of the Sports Daily CBB podcast. Today, it's the Big Ten report with Joe Meade. So a really kind of up and down week, Joe, in the Big Ten. And as always, we're going to start with your team of the week. So who have you got for us here?
Without a doubt, it would be Michigan. No, I'm kidding. No, I think it's at the end of the day, like two teams, but they both had conferences down. Formerly top great team in the country, Purdue, now being Northwestern and Maryland. And I know we kind of suck with based on this podcast, so I'm not going to get anything heated to death. But starting with Maryland, obviously Kevin Willard's first year, really impressive. And, Sean, Matt Pater still might get coach of the year. Kevin's Maryland's been on a roll. I think they can be where they are right now. It's just stunning. I can't really put it into words. And one thing we got to outside of Young and Scott, what got us in this Steve Martin joining the effort Saturday when they played Penn State. He was more involved. He got to the basket, moved out. And he scored 20 points. And then last night, just filling up the stat sheet, only 13, but getting rebounds, moving the ball well. And when he's more involved, it makes it a lot easier for their stars. And I'm not going to project anything too far because I'm not as big of a national analyst as you and Mike are, but I don't think it'd be a fun team to play. They still play great defense. If they continue to move the ball well and involve more than two or three scorers, I mean, that's a great recipe for whatever March Madness tournament that anyone's ever watched. And then to transition to Northwestern, I know for a lot of our Indiana listeners, they're going to be pretty skeptical about how they won the other night against the Hoosiers, but for what it's worth, they beat two of the top-ranked teams in the conference, both at home. Ever since that Michigan debacle, I'm just going to call it that because I still could not explain that one away. Dees has started to play better. Bowie is again great. And I think Northwestern, overall story-wise, we always hear for the past 4 or 5 years, just wait till these guys are seniors, wait till these guys are older. We've seen them start seasons well. And this is the year all the guys are older. Collins, at this point, this is his, I believe it's 10th season of the league. Yeah, it's crazy. It felt like yesterday when he was hired away from Duke. But, he knows the conference. The players know the conference. And now they know how to win in the conference. So they're firmly in second as of the recording of this podcast. So, don't want to beat the drum too many times. But both teams very impressive, playing their best basketball and really contending for that number 2 spot in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, we'll throw the Big Ten standings up here, Joe, and I think there are two ways we could go from here. You talked about Northwestern playing really well. They're at 10-5 in the conference. They're 6-2 on the road this year, which is pretty impressive. But if they're 12-4 at home, if they didn't lose so many home games, they would be right up there at the top of the league, which is not usually something that you say. And Maryland is right behind them in 4th now. Really, really, super close. We've got 2 games between Northwestern in 2nd and Michigan in 9th. So, a bad week, and you're going to be down there in the 8-9 game, maybe even the 10 spot. And that brings us to our next point, Joe. I think this team was in the conversation for second best team in the conference for a month or two there, but now they found themselves in 8th all of a sudden. That's Rutgers. They have kind of fallen off. A couple tough losses in a row here. Actually, 3 losses in a row. They lost at Indiana, they lost at Illinois, and then they lost to Nebraska at home. So what are your thoughts on Rutgers, and do you think they can get it back, or are they just not that good?
We're going to kind of repeat this theme when we talk about Wisconsin and Michigan, so I'm thinking of another way to say it, but this team can't score on the road, and we talked about it last week. They had a stretch against Illinois, where Illinois went on, pulling up the graphic here, Rutgers was held scoreless for more than 10 minutes in the second half. So Illinois went on a 19-0 run from down 6 to win the game. That cannot happen, period. And I'm still in the boat that come March, maybe that doesn't hurt you. But in terms of March, losing on the road is not going to help your case, especially not winning on the road. And then the loss to Nebraska. Actually, let's give Nebraska its fair shake. They've been very hot of late. Casey Tominaga has been phenomenal. Walker is a threat down low. Even though he's only 6'8", he's not a big guy by any stretch of the imagination. But when Nebraska gets hot, they score. And Rutgers, the rack, they rarely lose there. They're very good at home. Over the past 4 years, they've lost probably count on one or barely two hands how many games they've lost in conference there. And for Nebraska to come in and shoot the lights out, and yes, I'm saying Nebraska's hot, but Rutgers, for a defensive identity-based team, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the combination of, a key bench player and Mag being out, or they're just in a rough spot, or not feeling confident shooting the ball. I don't know what it is. One positive I took away from the Illinois game was they got McConnell more involved, but he's a streaky scorer at best, in my opinion. So, I mean, they go to the Kohl Center, and then they host Michigan and go to Penn State. Those are 3 games that I consider for them pretty winnable. They crushed Penn State early on this year. Wisconsin, as we'll get into later, kind of has the same problems as Rutgers. And then Michigan, they're a, I guess, hot or cold team, so you never know. They've struggled with Michigan in the past, only beating them once in their entire history. So we'll see. But, Sean, what do you have to say about them?
Yeah, they're just you can't really fault them for losing on the road to Indiana or Illinois because they're good teams, and they were close, 66-60, 69-60. But the Nebraska game was not. I didn't see that coming. Giving up 82 points to Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska is a half-court team. They play defense. They run their stuff. But Nebraska scored 82 points on 55 shots. That is, and it's not like they were like they hit 12 threes, but they took 30. So, or 29 or 28. My bad. But that really can't happen. Teams can get hot. I get it, but that was big. Like you said, though, they have 5 games left where, the 3 that you mentioned, then at Minnesota and at home to Northwestern. So they might have, they're going to think they have a chance to win all of these games. I'll throw the standings back up here for a second. Just, you got Rutgers there in 8th at 8-7. And just 1 game ahead of them is Iowa, Maryland, and Indiana, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So if Rutgers wins out, they might finish in 3rd. So, especially if they beat Northwestern on the last day. But, yeah, tough going for Rutgers here. Mag is out for the season, but he's not like a big enough player for it to matter as much as it is. He averages 7.8 points per game, 5th most minutes on the team. So, disappointing for Rutgers, but they have an opportunity to get it back against a, I don't know if we'll say revitalized Wisconsin team, but they certainly have got the, I don't know if momentum back on their side is right either, but they're playing a little better. I'll go there next. Wisconsin hosts Rutgers on Saturday at noon tomorrow. So Wisconsin, Joe, got on the wrong side of Nebraska, just like Rutgers, and then they were able to hold off Michigan at home. What are your thoughts on Wisconsin, and are they playing a little better, or are they just run into some teams that aren't very good?
We've beat to death how they've had trouble scoring. And in this game, for those who didn't watch, they didn't score for a majority of the second half. And when I say majority, I mean over 50%. They didn't score for the last 10:47 of the game. Didn't score a field goal, my apologies.
Big Ten basketball.
Yeah, and they still beat Michigan now. We'll get into Michigan later, but I don't think they've solved their biggest problems. I don't think scoring 79, especially in overtime, to beat Penn State last week convinced me, and certainly losing to Nebraska, although they're hot and on the road, was not a good sign, especially the way Nebraska plays defense. One positive sign for Wisconsin was they were getting offensive rebounds over Michigan. Now, you could kind of make the judgment on that if you're a Wisconsin fan, whether that was Michigan's incompetence or by your own by your own doing. But I mean, playing Rutgers next and playing Iowa next, both at home, so I think you have a fair shot to win it. And then playing at Michigan again the following Sunday. Those are realistic, winnable games. I don't know if you go in and expect like you're going to be favored in every one, but Rutgers is going to really put that to test if you could score again. And I don't think Wisconsin has solved their scoring issues at all. I think they shoot the three ball really well. I don't know why. They'll at times settle for a lot of mid range jumpers, and maybe Chucky Hepburn will make a few of them, but they're best when they threaten down low, draw doubles, and shoot wide open threes. That when Wisconsin did that, that's when they got runs against Michigan, and I think that would be my emphasis to them. Continue to shoot threes because the mid range jumpers aren't working. So if you're gonna take a risk, might as well be from the three line, right, Sean?
Yeah, they like the contested twos are like the worst shots in basketball, and a lot of this is sort of a Big Ten thing, not just a Wisconsin thing, but so many teams pass up open threes, take like two dribbles in, and then take a contested mid range. It just like it hurts to watch sometimes. But Wisconsin 2 wins in their last 3 games, and I think we'll know a lot more about them next week, Joe, after these 2 games at home against teams that are in the tournament pretty solidly. And if they drop them, and then it's going to be a desperate one for Michigan there. But if they win those 2, and then they go into Michigan and win, that they're going to be feeling pretty happy about their chances. The bubble's been really bad. After we talk about the teams, I've got the bracketology up that I just finished before we got on. The bubble's really weak. Now, if you don't play, you probably go up unless a team wins. Kentucky won yesterday in the SEC, which was big, but Wisconsin's been all you have to do is win, and you're going to go up, and you're going to be in the tournament. So Wisconsin's there. We'll go back to the Big Ten standings here, Joe, and pretty surprised we got this long without mentioning them briefly in the Maryland Team of the Week segment there. But in your opinion, do we have a title race now in the Big Ten? Purdue is 12-4, 3 wins in their or 3 losses in their last 4, and there are tough road games, but do you think somebody can catch Purdue, and why are they starting to lose some games?
I can't stray from my conviction that Purdue has the roster. I'm gonna say they're not a title race, and it's not because Purdue is really good, despite they'll continue to win. Elite team. But when you have gone through years, you look at Northwestern and Northwestern, they lose out to US Challenge twice. I mean, they cannot get TCU that home against Ohio State. That game's a look back on Saturday.
Yeah.
Thinking about it costs a lot more than a Big Ten title usually is, right? And then next Saturday, you certainly want to try some execution. But Indiana at home. So you have 6 days to rest between the two. So that'd be a nice period. I don't know if you can cross, banged up, tired, whatever, cross the boat. And then a 6 day break that basically is really maybe the second most veteran coach in the Big Ten besides Izzo. So I think Matt Painter probably has a good gauge on how to engage his team from his freshman to his leadership in Zach Edey. But I'm gonna say no, and it's just the whole trend of the conference, right? I'm not gonna pretend to be overly analytical in this answer. The amount of teams who've gone hot, cold. Remember, like 3 weeks ago, we thought Northwestern was cold. They're in second now. We thought Michigan was hot. They're looking like they're playing that 8-9 game on Thursday at noon, right? So the whole trend of the conference, no team is consistent. It's about time, I think, and I think that's maybe on both of us for not assuming Purdue would have trend where they would fall a little. I'm not going to say this like this massive thing, as you said, it's 2 big road games, but no, I think it's the first fall of the year, and with Matt Painter at the helm, and they still have a very talented team. In case anyone else forgot, so I'm not worried about their Big Ten title hopes. In terms of March, we'll get into that later. But what do you think, Sean?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot. I just it's bad timing for Purdue. Their toughest I would say probably the three toughest road games right now in the Big Ten. Maryland, Northwestern, and Indiana, the way that the teams are playing, other than Purdue, of course. They had them in a 4-game stretch, and they didn't play very well in them. And tough timing, not playing great with a tough schedule, but they're ahead they're the only team that's played 16 games, I believe, at least in the top 11, which is all that could fit on the graphic here. But they, like you said, they had that 6-day break after the ultimate get-right game home to Ohio State. I don't think we really have to talk about them, Joe, but they've quit on the season. They're going to destroy them there, and then they have 6 days off for Indiana. I believe that Ohio State-Purdue game on Sunday, they'll have the top 16 bracket reveal at halftime. It's either the Saturday CBS game or the Sunday CBS game. I'm not entirely sure, but Purdue's Sunday. Yeah, so that'll be at their halftime then, and they're going to be a 1 seed still, unless they lose out. But they only have 4 games left. Ohio State, Indiana at home. I'd be really shocked if they don't win that, just with the rivalry. And yeah, and Indiana might keep it close because they did last year, but that'll be a big game for Purdue. They'll have 6 days. No, I'm not holding out much hope for Indiana there. But then they got Wisconsin on the road and Illinois at home. So there's a really good chance they can finish 16-4 and be into the Big Ten tournament with 4 losses, get that 1 seed. But yeah, I'm not worried for them. I do think, I'll say this, if Indiana had beaten Northwestern on Wednesday, and Indiana was 10-5, 1 game behind Purdue, or a game and a half, with the tiebreaker, would your answer change to are they threatened?
Hypotheticals, but I'll just defend me and Sean doing hypotheticals. I think what if it's fine, and if you're explaining the context of an argument, because for any team in the Big Ten, it's decided by inches or 1 shot or 2 shots, right? I mean, just think about Iowa in Indiana earlier this year, and then the boo-booey play. Be your own judge on that. We're not here to be rules experts, but I would say, yeah, just because they would play them, and Indiana did beat them. Although, if I was a betting man, I would not put money on Indiana to win at Mackey Arena.
No.
And that would be Purdue's biggest game of the year. That's safe to say. Take the rivalry out of it. To a team you lost to, and a team at home. Come on, I could not bet on Indiana yet. I'm still not completely sold. We'll talk about them later, but no, I could not do that.
Yeah, I think Northwestern has had a phenomenal season, and they did beat Purdue on Wednesday, last Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
Don't believe that they played at Mackey, and that's real quick check here through their schedule. They did not play at Mackey, so Northwestern would have a potential tiebreaker there, but Northwestern would have to run the table, and Purdue would have to lose at least 1, maybe more, of their last 4 games. So it's highly unlikely that they won't win the league. And then if you clinch early for Purdue, you might be able to, not load manage your guys like in the NBA, but you might not have to let guys go for 40 minutes at the end of the season. And they're going to be the 1 seed probably, and they're going to win the league. Makes that loss to Northwestern really hurt as an Indiana fan because of Purdue losing the very next day. But I guess we'll go into Indiana next, Joe. Tough loss for the Hoosiers at Northwestern. They were down by, I think it got to 20 in the first half, but then they came back and almost won. But Boo Buie made a play at the end of the game. He had 21 points on just 13 shots. And this game was kind of the opposite of all the Indiana games that have happened. They've gotten out to big leads and held on barely, but in my opinion, this was just 2 teams that were playing really at a high level, and just I'm not entirely worried about Indiana as an Indiana fan. They got Illinois tomorrow at home, should be able to win that, but just on the wrong side of a close Big Ten game, and you see them all the time in this conference.
Yeah, I think if I was an Indiana fan, don't even consider this in the context of before the season because Michigan at the beginning was a top 25 team. But even going into that 2 game stretch where you play at Chrysler, a place where Indiana until Saturday hadn't won since 2016, and then to Northwestern, a team they had lost to this year, they split that. I'm not saying they would be happy, but
No,
they would probably think that's realistic,
yeah,
right?
I would have said that's probably fair. I mean, you could have lost both of them. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and I mean both games were decided at the last second, right? So to in the Big Ten, if you've got 2 road games decided by the last second, if you get one, normally you just put your hands up and accept it because it could have easily, especially the Michigan game, the way Indiana played. I think Hood Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis obviously played well, but the rest of the team did not shoot well. They did not get a lot of open threes. Uh, they didn't even get looks at open threes, and Michigan's defense is not good. So I think that would be on Indiana's offense. Nonetheless, they won the game, not taking anything away from them. So there's no reason to worry for Indiana. I'm in agreement with that sentiment. I think one thing they need to do better, whether this is a road issue or maybe it's just been of the past week or so, they need to get more open threes for their guys, right? I think their offense is best when you have to double Trace Jackson, as we said last week. And when Indiana hits threes, and then if those aren't falling, they can give it to Trace. They're one of the scariest teams in the country. We've seen that when their offense has exploded. So their offense definitely has not exploded in the last 3 games, I would say. Even Rutgers, they'll win. I wasn't. And that's probably Indiana, but going to more open threes, totally actually. That'd be a good opportunity. And we saw that they could for them to do that again, I think would be I think that's what they have to do, right? Get threes, hit threes, get more guys involved. Assuming they're going to win.
yeah. I have a couple of stats here because I watch every game. But Indiana's in the top 20 in the country in 3-point percentage. Now that's great, but they don't shoot enough threes. They shot 12 against Rutgers, 5 of 12. They only shot 6 against Michigan. They were 2 of 6, and they only shot 11 against Northwestern at 3 and 11 or 3 for 11. So the way that you come back if you are down is you make threes, especially in a game that's in the 60s. And Northwestern and Rutgers, 2 of the best defenses in the league. I get it, but I'd really like to see Indiana get to 70 tomorrow and get some other people involved because, like you said, that's kind of been the story on the road. It's Trace, it's Hood Schifino, and not much else. Race Thompson did have 13, but he made every shot he took. He was 4 for 4 from the field and 5 of 6 from the free throw line. So, he didn't really get a lot of touches. His buckets were exclusively off of post-to-post passes on the Trace Jackson Davis double, or maybe one of them was Renew, but he was not really they didn't really run plays for him, and it's disappointing, but you got a home game against Illinois, you got to win it. In my opinion, it's in the midst of a 5-game stretch with 4 road games, and you're 1-1 on the road so far. Okay, if you get this home game and then you go 1-1 in the next 2 road games, you take a 3-2 record through a 5-game stretch with 4 road games. So, it'll be tough. This conference is tough, but still think Indiana can finish second or at least third. In my opinion, third is such a. Or I'll ask you this, Joe. 4th to 3rd is the biggest jump in chances to win the league or win the tournament. I think the Big Ten tournament, the jump from the 4th to the 3rd seed.
I think you could take that as 2 different answers. So I think in the context of every tournament, you're looking at every single Big Ten tournament. I would say yes. However, Indiana, one thing we have to consider is the crowd they usually bring to Chicago and obviously Indianapolis is phenomenal. I think the biggest question for them is just get the double bottom, right? That would be my message.
Even the 5 is all right. Like, I know you have to play another game, but it's going to be against a team that's way down there at the bottom. I would be, obviously I'd like the double bye, and Indiana's not in a position where they have to play like another game, but I would be okay with the 5 right now. But the 6 is when you get a little dicey. Then you're playing an 11 seeded team, which will be Penn State or Wisconsin or Michigan Michigan, Wisconsin, or Penn State. That's when you can lose. So the double bye is so important in this league. You got to win only 3 games.
3 games, yeah,
Only
Friday,
three
Saturday,
games.
Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's not easy by any means. But 4 is a lot tougher because you play 3 in a row sometimes in the preseason tournaments, and you're playing once 2 games in 3 days in the NCAA tournament, and sometimes in the league you get one day off. But you're not doing 4 and 4 ever.
No,
So
and just for our listeners, a little stat here. There were only 3 teams that have done it: Iowa in the mid 2000s, and then Michigan in the 2017 and 2018 seasons. And just not to minimize how hard that is, the 2017 Michigan team, they went to the Sweet 16, lost by 1 on a last second shot that didn't go in for Michigan against Oregon, who went to the Final Four with that Dylan Brooks team, phenomenal team. Then the 2018 team went to the national title game where they got absolutely bombed by Villanova. Not to remind everyone about that, but I just want to give context. It's not easy to win 4 in 4 days. We saw Indiana last year. They played 3 games, obviously winning 2. They were damn close, I would say.
Bohannon banked in 3 at the buzzer away from
Yeah,
playing for the
yeah,
championship.
old man Bohannon, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not easy. That's my message. So
Yeah.
that's all the difference. That's why the top 4 means so much. Just to nail this into our listeners' heads.
Yeah, and the just not really a Big Ten thing, but when Kemba Walker did it at UConn, they won 5 in 5 days. And obviously they were the 9 seed in that old Big East with 16 teams, and they won 5 games in 5 days, which is more of a testament of how impressive that was. I guess it could happen if you're an 11 seed, but those teams down there are not built to win 5 in 5
Well,
days.
Penn State,
Not like anybody
maybe if you
is,
hit
though.
every single 3. If you
Yeah.
hit every single 3 in all your games.
But what are the
Okay.
chances that you have it 5 days in a row from downtown?
Yeah.
But probably not. But it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to this conference tournament season, not just in the Big Ten, but the Big 12 will be a bloodbath. The Big East will be a bloodbath. But it should be really fun. We're just 5 and 4 games away for some teams, and we've talked about a lot of these teams, Joe. A couple teams in the middle. How about we go to Illinois now? It's just been a really up and down year for the Fighting Illini, and that trend keeps continuing. They were able to knock off Rutgers last Saturday, but they got swept this year by Penn State. So for me, and I'll say my thoughts on them, then you can say whether you agree. They're just a 6 or 7 seed. They might win a game, but they're not consistent enough to make a run. They have good players. They have good nights, but 2 out of 5 times they play like a NIT team.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, let's just get the overwhelming storyline going into the year with all these transfers, TJ Shannon, Meyer, and just Coleman Hawkins. You bring a lot of experienced guys back, right? Mixed in Sky Clark, and they're obviously not with the program anymore. The expectation for Illinois wasn't that they would be world beaters at the beginning, but by January, February, March, they weren't a terrible pick. I think they were a decently popular pick to win the Big Ten regular season, right, Sean?
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like pretty evenly split between IU, Michigan, and Illinois. Those were the consensus top 3 at the beginning of the year, and there's a pretty good chance that none of those teams are going to finish in the top 3. So yeah.
No, and for Illinois, I would just say what their biggest goal hasn't been to win the Big Ten. It's been to getting back to that Sweet 16, something that has escaped them for the past 18 years. And based on everything I've seen, I've defended Illinois. I think Brad Underwood is a heck of a coach. And with the veteran presence on the team, I thought they would get together eventually. I thought it was
Yeah, there's a little bit of revenge there, and Indiana only won there by I think it may have been 13, but Indiana was up by it was 15. Okay, they were up by 20 that entire game pretty much, and maybe they figure it out at Indiana, but Indiana coming off a loss, I really don't like Illinois' chances there, and if you're Indiana, you got to take care of business. But they had that they have that postponed Minnesota game just 2 days later, Joe. So it's going to be pretty fast here for Illinois. It's a good thing if you're playing well. You have a lot of games you want to keep playing if you're playing well, but if you're not, that's you want to get off the court and get in the practice gym. But yeah, keep going.
Overall, yeah, of their 6 remaining
Considering it's like 3 weeks too, not even 3 weeks.
so that will be John Baptist, Indiana, Northwestern next Thursday, and then being at Meade against the Tigers. Who would win those games and who would after the playoffs? Very good also against a lot of their opponents. I think that could be the three. But other than that, I'm in the field, and we answered this pretty well in the Big Ten tournament preview with these three appearances. Who wins the game? Good basketball. Not saying win the big three, but Michigan State, Purdue playing good basketball, United playing great basketball. So that's what this team kind of looks like this year. Not to sound like a holy roller, but pieces of it, right? This is who they are. And how they have not gotten there is still shocking to me. So I think their answer is going to come later than that. And then obviously, when we make the season, me and Sean just have to big number three. A lot to pay attention to there. They need to gel. They need to figure it out. They can't like a team like Cincinnati just can't go 5-1 and lose and make it unlike they're not in March. Those are teams that are saying go west to 6 or 7. The 10 or 11 seeds typically win. So I'm not ruling out the toss around it.
No, no. And if they end up getting to a 5, which they might, they're gonna play a Liberty or a Kent State or a VCU, teams that are, have 4 or 5 losses on the year. That just seems like it screams upset. Illinois screams upset. Even if they like in the 7-10 game or even an 8-9, they play like another power conference team that is like really streaky. They could lose. They really could, and I don't think we're going to figure out much about Illinois the rest of the year. To be honest, they have both the Indiana schools away. They're probably not going to win them. You can't really fault them for not winning them. And then all the other games they should win. They should beat Northwestern at home. If they don't go 4-2, losing to the Indiana schools on the road, beating everybody else, I'd be shocked. But like Purdue, we're going to figure out what they're all about in Chicago, which is not super close to Illinois, but it's definitely closer than most schools. So,
And they'll probably be third in that
yeah,
7-10 Chicago, Indiana, Northwestern Nashville. Chicago
yeah,
first,
it's
but
even though it's 45 minutes away.
it was at United Center. Now that's what you want to do. Normally Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Michigan State, right? And Purdue, actually Purdue's probably top five in there, but they'll have somewhat of a home court advantage. So if you're an Illini fan, you want to see your team get it together, make your feelings known at the United Center. That's my message to you right now.
Yeah, and whoever wins the Big Ten tournament is going to have to get a little lucky. You're going to have to get teams on their bad day. If you make the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament, that's always what I've thought. You make it to Saturday, the CBS game. You're like, all right, we did our part here. If you lose, that means you lose to a good team, and you take it and get to the semifinal, and then you move on. But all right, I know you got to go somewhere soon, Joe. So we'll rapid fire a couple off here. You could talk about Michigan, then I'll go with Michigan State.
Yeah, no, Michigan, it's hard to stay civil talking about them. They had two games that, unlike Indiana, Indiana almost won everything. And both those games came in clutch.
They probably should have won both, to be honest, or at least one.
I know. There's some extra there. On the loss side, right there, Indiana just pumped out points, 40 points the last five full seasons like that. You're not winning against a big team like Indiana, like
All you have to do is score 2 and you win.
yeah, all of a sudden you're getting more a team that has a closer scoring opinion than you actually score, and you have a response. I'm sorry, and Michigan in the last this whole year they've played 7 almost games decided by field goals, but one win was against Iowa. So against an actual good team.
they'd at least be in that last eight or the first eight out, which is like I said earlier. The bubble like stinks this year. Michigan wins. Michigan wins 3, 4 in a row here. They'll be right back there, even though they don't really deserve it. They're not.
Fans, and this will transition Sean to Michigan State. Tomorrow's going to be one of the most. I'll be in attendance, and I think it'll be one of the most emotion-filled venues of a college basketball game I've ever seen. I'm not even going to say strange. I was at a few COVID basketball games where there were probably less than 100 people there. That was strange, but tomorrow it's going to be in a packed arena. Obviously, an emotional week, not just for Michigan State University, but for the whole state of Michigan, right? That was a very shocking incident. We don't need to go into that. We not a politics podcast by any means, but both teams gonna be interesting, I would say is the word, because you can't project how a team feels after something like that, especially Michigan State, which we'll give right to Sean.
Yeah, the Michigan State, just another one of those years. I just sent you the bracketology, Joe. I'll throw it up here on the YouTube so that you can take a look, or you won't be able to look at it, but our listeners will. This is where I have a Michigan State right there at the first 9 seed. Just another one of those years for Michigan State. They're not super talented, but they play hard and they are clearly well coached. They held Ohio State to just 41 points, which is pretty impressive. Ohio State's quit on the year. But this, we keep saying Michigan needs to win or their season's over. Well, this time it's actually true. They can't go to 14-13. They need to win it because they have a lot of tough games the rest of the way. They have at Rutgers, Wisconsin at home, who they just lost to, at Illinois and at Indiana. They probably need to win 4 out of 5. They need to win 5 out of 7 the rest of the way. They need to get a win in the Big Ten tournament too, just to be considered. There's only a couple potential bid stealers this year, but if Florida Atlantic doesn't win the Colonial, that's another spot off the bubble because they're going to make it. Mountain West could have a bid steal. So, it is a weak bubble now, but there's always a couple bid stealers that at the end of the year you say, oh, maybe it's not such a weak bubble, but it's do or die for Michigan. 8 o'clock on Fox tomorrow. No matter how bad or good the teams are, it's always a fun rivalry to watch. I'll probably be tuning in, but Michigan really needs it. Have they played yet this year, Joe? They have. Yep. Yeah. So Purdue's still the number 2 overall, Purdue's still the number 2 overall seed. Not very. They're not changing a whole lot. Kansas and Houston still behind them. Indiana's second for me, still at the first 5 seed. Illinois, Northwestern in the 6s. Maryland, Rutgers at the 7. Maryland or Iowa at the 6 also. Yep. We didn't really talk about Iowa today. They're pretty good all of a sudden. And I'll go back to the standings just for a second here. They are in 3rd right now. They have the tiebreaker over Maryland and Indiana. Their offense, like we've said many times, elite. Their defense at times can be pretty good, but also at times can be really awful. So you could take it away, Joe, after Rutgers and Maryland at the 7 seeds. Yeah. Yeah, they just need to win the games that they're supposed to. They're going to get the benefit of the doubt. You see 2 blue bloods there in that first, or the last 4 in, North Carolina and Kentucky. If they're close, they're getting in. Michigan State, same thing. they would love nothing more than to throw a team like Michigan State to Dayton for the first four, like they did with Indiana last year. But Kentucky and North Carolina, they're not. If they that would be pretty cool if they played. But Michigan State's still pretty clear that they'll probably finish around 10-10 in the Big Ten, maybe 11-9. They just need to kind of go 500 the rest of the way, to be honest, and they'll be right there in an 8-9 game. And they're not a team that I would want to play as a one seed.
No, and then well, we talked about this last week. Continue winning or just not lose. I guess maybe scheduling out. I'm going to talk about Penn State here. I see this similar to very systematic. I mean, honestly, what do you see?
They're a little bit further back. They're a little further back. They did lose four in a row before or five in a row, actually, before they lost to, or they beat Illinois. But their next two games are Minnesota and Ohio State, both on the road, but both against two of the worst teams in the Big Ten. So you get an opportunity there. Then you get Rutgers, Northwestern, Maryland. So there are chances for Penn State, but right now, I wouldn't think that they're much closer than Michigan, to be honest. The first four out is teams like Clemson, USC, teams like that, and those teams aren't very good either. So if you get hot for Penn State, who knows? They certainly can, but they do probably need to win the games that they're supposed to and maybe pick off a game that they shouldn't, because they have the good wins. They beat Illinois twice. They beat Indiana. But right now they're just they're 15-11, 6-9 in the conference. They really 10-10 would be really good for them, and that still might not be enough. But they're a little bit further away than they're probably like seventh or eighth team out right now. I kind of stop after four out now because those teams in the fifth to eighth out are not even close to the field. That's probably where they would be for me.
That's comfortably in, so that would be between that's Northwestern, Iowa, Purdue's pretty card the one, Maryland, Indiana, Illinois. Of those teams, who is the best line going maybe 6-11?
That's a really tough one, Joe. I think any of those six seeds probably. All of them have some good wins. Indiana has a couple good wins too at the 5 seed. Maybe if Indiana beats Purdue again, they could get to 3. But I would say Indiana's ceiling's probably a 3 seed, and then Illinois, Northwestern, Iowa, Rutgers, Maryland, maybe the 4. Maryland might have a little more room to grow just because they're so good at home, and they have a lot of good wins there. But they also only have 2 wins outside their home arena, which is something that's not looked. It's tough to do that and be up there. But there's so many of those good Big 12 teams, and St. Mary's and Creighton's playing really well again. And so I think unless a team kind of runs the table here for the rest of the regular season, we're going to see Purdue at the 1, maybe one Big 10 team at the 5, and then a lot of 6s, 7s, and 8s, and then Wisconsin at the bubble. But things could change clearly, and if that's, or we'll leave them with this, Joe. Give the listeners one game to look out for, maybe during the week next week that we haven't talked about already.
I want to look at, and it's a very weird one, is Maryland at Nebraska. It's more the overwhelming theme of Nebraska being a spoiler, and we've seen that. They've spoiled plenty of teams. I wouldn't want to say seasons quite yet, but it looks that way for Penn State and perhaps Wisconsin, right? So they play Michigan State. I'm just saying, for the overwhelming trend, if Nebraska gets hot, they become a team where you can't afford to lose to them, not only because it's a loss in the Big Ten with this tight race, but also it's not going to be a very forgiving look by the tournament. It's kind of the thing on the resume, like an arrest or you got expelled from school or something where they go, huh? Right? Like, it's an eyebrow raiser for sure. So avoid the eyebrow raisers around March. That would be my message.
And like we said, Maryland only 2 wins on the road. Nebraska's playing well. You kind of need to win that. Maryland is playing really well. They could, like I said, they could get to a 4 or 5. I have 2 here. Iowa at Wisconsin Wednesday night. Iowa's playing really well, kind of under the radar. And Wisconsin, it's at home. It's a really big opportunity for Wisconsin to get solidly in the tournament. And then Thursday, another one, Northwestern and Illinois, also at 9. At Illinois. So with how inconsistent Illinois has been, that could be anywhere in like a 30-point range, I think. Northwestern could win by 10, Illinois could win by 20, but it's going to be a great week in the Big Ten. We're getting closer. It's February 17th. March is 2 weeks away, and then Big Ten tournament, and then NCAA tournament. It's going to be a great end of the season. So thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Big Ten Report with Joe Meade. We'll see you next Friday.